Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey folks, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to speak with Brendan Breen, president at the Industrial Supply Association. It was such a pleasure listening to Brendan and listening to all the new ideas and the things that he brings in. Now, Brendan's been around the association game for a lot of years, and he's kind of seen how different organizations work. And I think that well-rounded background is really impressive and exciting for an association. He's got some brilliant ideas, some things he really wants to do to drive that association. And really the big message I heard was, how do we provide more value to the members? And I think that really has to be in the forefront of every association exec's mind, is that value proposition. What am I going to do to enhance the membership? Not only the distributor members in this case, but also the associates or the manufacturers, and frankly, the rep organizations in there. I mean, really the whole community. And so, the theme for him has been, how do we get these folks talking to each other? So providing more opportunities to network with one another, share ideas, and really become partners in that industrial industry. So terrific interview. Really enjoyed speaking with Brendan, and I hope you enjoy it as well. This episode is brought to you by HMI Performance Incentives. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've been exposed to some form of loyalty point system. What a lot of people don't understand is that these programs are not just for the big kids targeting consumers. Loyalty incentive programs are used by small to mid-sized organizations focusing on the B2B market each and every day. From service contractors to stylists, plant engineers to purchasing agents, incentive systems work. You can learn more about HMI performance incentives at www.hmiaward.com or connect with them on LinkedIn at HMI Performance Incentives. Be sure to let them know you heard about them from me, Jason Bader, on the Distribution Talk podcast. All right, Brendan. Hey, welcome to Distribution Talk. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with me today.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. My pleasure. So you've been in the association management world, for most of your career, but if you wouldn't mind, take us back. First of all, how did you get in the association world? But how did that become a career path? And then maybe talk a little bit about some of the stops along the way.
So you're assuming that I didn't come when I was, what did you want to be when you grow up? They didn't ask me. And I said, obviously I want to be an association professional, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I'll tell you what, I graduated college and I moved down to Washington, D.C. My family was living there at the time, and I didn't know what an association was. I had heard of several of them, but I didn't know that they were called associations. And I had a couple of really happenstance things happen. I got plugged into my alumni association at UVM, who was pretty active down there in DC, and a few people. I had a really great informational interview with a guy who was the president of the Building Owners and Managers Association.
Okay.
And he kind of turned me on to it. He said, look, it's a great way for you to learn a little bit about a lot. You learn a little bit about a lot of different industries. You get to dip your toe into sales, marketing, HR, IT. You get to do all these great things, and no day is ever the same. So I had a good informational interview, and he plugged me in with somebody that was hiring, and the rest is kind of history. I fell in love pretty early on.
Interesting. So was it that Building Owners Management?
It was like a sister association. It was the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors. They all kind of sound the same, but everyone meets a different requirement. So yeah, I was an admissions manager. They had a complex join process that was you had to do 4 or 5 different things in order to get there. And I managed that process. So it was fun. I got to meet a lot of new people really, really quickly. But yeah, I also learned that in DC, association is like big business. That's where they are all headquarters for the most part. Right. And so it opened my eyes to saying, oh my gosh, there's tons of these associations everywhere. This could be a good career.
Oh, I'll tell you, it was shocking for me when I left the distribution world and came over to this side of the fence, learning how many associations, first of all, associations, then association management companies, and all the different flavors. And I think it is just fascinating. And I wish more, career guidance folks would say, hey, this is actually kind of a cool gig. You get to travel, you get to check out some cool places, generally speaking, if you land with a good association, you meet some really amazing business owners.
You do. I mean, if you're on the trade side, which is what ISA is, we have companies that are members. You do get to meet a lot of the principals of these companies and how they're positioning their company. But I've also worked for these individual associations like the dentists or psychological scientists, and you get to get into their own career development and their own development as an individual and trying to help them along the way. It's just fascinating work. Really interesting.
It is. No, absolutely. So yeah, again, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of walk through a couple of the steps and then what eventually you landed here at ISA.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of it is the story of my family. So again, my family was in DC. I worked at a couple associations there, the realtors, then psychological scientists, and both of those were great opportunities for me to get more focused in on membership. That was where my focus was, membership engagement and development and value production. And then I met my wife, and we discovered that both of our families were living in New Jersey at the time. My parents had moved, and her family was up there, and we were kind of both raised here. And so we decided to move up to New Jersey and start a family up here. I landed with an organization that was in need of a membership director at the Dental Association for New Jersey. So again, very different membership base, but a lot of the same principles. I went to grad school to get my master's, and then I landed at an AMC, which is, you mentioned, the association management company.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like a management company that associations hire to be their staff.
Right.
And my first client was the Industrial Supply Association. I was their account lead, and so they were managed by a company that had managing them for some time. And fast forward a few years, they parted ways with the management company and started their own standalone staff, not using any outsourced people. And now all of a sudden I am leading that association as a full-time employee and the president. So it's been a great ride, full of a lot of different constituents and subject areas. I mean, I could tell you things about dentistry that you probably don't know, or psychological science, or nuclear physicist. That was one that was in there as well. Yeah. I mean, these are interesting fields that you get to dip your toe into. And then, like I said, a lot of the principles are the same, but it was I found it to be an incredibly rewarding career.
Interesting. So you mentioned that ISA went to a management company, then they worked, independent. And I've seen some associations do that, kind of roll back and forth. Is that common for them to kind of change tacts? Or?
Well, I think it comes down to leadership. And ISA was really blessed when I met ISA. They were blessed with the fact that they had just brought on a new leader in Ed Gerber. He was previously from the industrial supply industry, had been sales leader for distributors and manufacturers in the industrial channel. And they had brought him on to be their president and CEO right around the time that I came to the team. And he was just a visionary, and he saw that ISA needed a rebrand. It needed a refresh. And that was really at a time where a lot of associations needed that. And so there was really a divide. Some stayed the course and really dug into what they had been doing for many years. And then others had adapted. They had gone to, a more visionary approach. They worked on their brand. They tried to make it so it wasn't the same association that people had known forever. And Ed was really great at that. He got really crisp on clarifying who ISA should be. He started trimming a lot of the things that weren't really moving the needle for our members, and then enhancing the ones that were. And then again, I was given an opportunity to step into his role when he pursued something else. And I think that, we never really looked back once we parted ways with the AMC. We now have control over all of our operations. We're still very lean and mean, but I think that it does happen commonly when you have good leadership in place. I think that the association management model is great for some. If you don't have that outsourced leader or that strong person at the top, association management company can make a whole lot of sense. But for ISA, I think that our opportunity was too great, and we needed to take full control over all of our operations.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I definitely, I know Ed, and I think absolutely the way you described him is appropriate. So throughout your association management career, was there any aspect that you gravitated toward, like maybe education, or you did have admissions in there somewhere, but
I think that, my passion from the start has really been in membership. Now, I like to say that it's everyone on the team's job to focus on membership, but I think that was where I really grew up in this industry. I was a admissions manager, then membership manager, then membership director, membership engagement lead. And then, what it forces you to do is spend time talking to members a lot. And I think that it has been the thing that has been the most rewarding, and I think allows me to use my skills is to the best of my abilities to understand and listen to what my members need, and then develop association programs to match them. And so as the membership lead, I was the person who got to bring the feedback back from the member and give it to the events team or give it to the education team, and to be that voice of the customer person for our teams. And so I would say that my focus on member value, my focus on membership engagement, and my focus on membership revenue growth has really been, I would say, my lane as I grew up in this industry.
Gotcha. So, you and I talked earlier about the evolution of associations and association management for that matter. But, trying to provide more value. And again, I think this really ties into where your specialty is, and where you gravitated towards that member development and really trying to find things to improve the value proposition to the membership. But this is something you've worked very hard on now recently at ISA, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we had this, again, Ed built a really strong foundation for us to springboard on, but we were also cruising right out of a pandemic when he left. And so it was like, all right, pandemic's over. Now what are you guys going to do? And so we had two different ways we could go. Is we could scattershot and say, all right, we are going to try to do a lot of different things. If we listen to all of our members and try to do all of them, or we could try to be the best at what we do. And I think that our decision was to go with the latter and to be the best at gathering together our community, getting all of the right people in the right place, focused on the right things. And then also we wanted to plant our flag and saying we are going to be the best networking association in the industry. Networking, as it came back after the pandemic, I think came back a lot stronger than a lot of people thought it was going to. I think a lot of people were thinking, all right, Zoom is now going to replace conferences. It's now going to replace business meetings. And while we still use it all the time, the feeling that you get when you go to an in-person event, the efficiency of having 20, 30, 40 in-person meetings over the course of 3 days is unmatched. And those same meetings can't be replicated by Zoom. And so there's still such a need for in-person networking that ISA just grabbed it and said, this is what we're going to be excellent at. So we have upped our game in our events. We've upped our game in terms of our community building, and we add more value to those events by hooking into good education, good experiences, facilitated networking, whatever we can to make sure that at our core, those few things that we want to be the best at, we can deliver. It's hard to be the best at everything. So I think you got to pick your lane.
For sure. Yeah. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that I absolutely agree with you, by the way. And I do a boatload of Zoom-based work, and I do a boatload of online, trainings, things like that. But there is absolutely nothing that matches that eyeball to eyeball connection. I mean, that is just so critical. And I think that when you're in these events, there is an energy that's that's shared by that group. And I think it was about a year or so ago, I interviewed Molly Alton Mullins. Do you know Molly? Yeah. So I interviewed Molly, and and she was itching. She was one of the ones that was just itching to get back in person again. But I understand why. I understand that passion to be in front of people. It's really hard to gauge reaction when you're on a call, kind of like we are right now, or a Zoom. It's hard to gauge. I mean, you can see facial expressions, but it's really hard to kind of gauge whether that individual that you're working with is excited, or if they're kind of like, I don't know if, I don't know if I'm buying what you're selling.
That's right. And the other thing that is impossible to replicate is the energy in the room. There's a buzz and an energy when you are all gathered. There's also a community. I mean, these are the things that are the unspoken reasons why people have joined associations for, over 100 years, is that they want to be part of a community. They want to be around their peers, and they see the power of leveraging a room full of your peers to your benefit and to the mutual benefit of all. I mean, that can't be done on a one-to-one Zoom or even a Zoom room with 100 people. It just doesn't. Right. I mean, everyone's multitasking, everyone's doing other things. You can't do it. And so we tried some new things on our first year back after the convention to lean a little bit heavier into the education and maybe de-emphasize our booth program and do some other things. And we learned a ton. We got some pretty good feedback from our members about what we should be focusing on. But it was part of the process. We wanted to apply some principles that we learned during the pandemic to the post-pandemic. And it's not exactly the same. You knew that you needed to get back in person. I don't think I knew how much everybody wanted to get back in person. And so it's been great. This past year's convention was awesome. We just had such an energy. So I was really happy about it.
Perfect segue. Let's talk about this convention you most recently wrapped up.
Sure. So we were in Phoenix, which was nice to, to get to someplace warm in April, as it was, I'm here in New Jersey and it was still clinging to the 40s and 50s around that point. It was nice to get out into the desert and spend some time with not just my management team, who is phenomenal, by the way, but to get out in front of our members. And so it was a 3-day affair. We had keynotes, good education, tons and tons of networking, but our whole theme for the whole thing was that we are going to be the best networking show in the industry. And we didn't just want to say that. We wanted to try to deliver that. So we added a bunch of new things. We added a golf tournament on the front of it. We added a 5K fun run, networking, like facilitated networking lunches where there was assigned seats, which kind of terrified me. I didn't know whether that was going to work, but it was awesome to see. People loved it. And you had principals sitting with, entry-level people and having great conversations. I mean, you don't get that kind of exposure by just, putting out your rubber chicken and saying, all right, everyone sit in this big open room. Everyone is just going to sit with the people they know. And so I think that it was a really phenomenal event, good energy. We exceeded expectations in registration and booths, and just the feedback was phenomenal,
Yeah.
So it was a good event.
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just imagining this, the wedding setting, it's like, wedding and assigned seating and things like that. That had to be a little bit of a logistics nightmare.
I mean, we worked on it a lot. Again, when the concept was introduced to me by our events director, Destiny, she said, I think we should try this. And I said, oh man, nobody's going to want to do this. So first off, I said, let's make it optional. And so people, when they signed up for registration, could elect to go into that. And we made their lunch a little bit better than the rest of the lunches, hot lunch, or whatever. But what I was shocked about was 75% of our attendees signed up to do it, knowing full well that they were going to be placed with a random people at their table. And then we just, now I'm getting into the event planning side of things, but we just did a fishbowl. When you walked into the room, you grabbed a number out of a bowl and then you went to your table. So I had the same concerns, but we had, it wasn't just go to the table and start talking to people. We had a few of our team members get up on stage and ask some probing questions and got people to discuss them, but they had some fun. I mean, it was, again, lively conversation. The only negative feedback we got was do it in a place where we can be as loud as we want to be, because they were told to quiet down by some of the booths that were right around them. But I mean, that's a good problem to have, people having a good time and chatting. So it was a surprise for sure. But now I think we're going to make it standard. Why not do it and keep doing it?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you, Brendan, I literally wrote about this last week about my favorite part of the trade association that I would attend every year was something called the wrap session. And it was a roundtable session, and there would be questions that, were thrown on the table. But it was, now I think assigned seating would have been kind of interesting. That really would have mixed it up a little bit. But as a distributor, we're sitting with manufacturers rep agents. But that's my favorite part of that event, because I think that, really that was where all the nuggets of information, the thing that was going to pay for my trip was sitting in that room. And so I hope that associations listen to that and really say, you know what, I want to do more of that.
We have to. I mean, I think that I stood up on stage and really admitted one of my frustrations in front of the whole audience when, previously we would spend so much time making our booth program as good as possible, which we still do. We still want our app to function right. We still want the scheduler to work. We want people to be satisfied with those booth hours. But people would come to me and they would say, Brendan, the booth program's great. You did a good job. But honestly, I get the majority of my work done at the bar. I'd say, okay, so why don't I just buy a bunch of Bud Lights and just put it out there for everybody?
Totally.
So I think that the concept, though, is right. The concept is you have to give people opportunities and make it intentional. So how do you replicate that happenstance of a conversation of two people running into each other at a reception or in the hallway outside of an event? How do you get people to do that? And so that's what that golf event was for. That's what the 5K was for. We had people walking and running together that, they ended up doing business with each other. They ended up transferring that into a booth meeting. So it's how can ISA keep doing more stuff like that so that people are like, yeah, not only did I randomly meet somebody, but ISA helped me facilitate randomly meeting up with somebody. That was helpful. So that's what we're going to try to keep leaning into with our events.
Yeah, I think that is an amazing byproduct of that. Being at, a 5K or even a golf tournament, you expect that. you kind of expect people that they'll have a relationship after, and that's what I've found, whenever I've attended those things. But a 5K run, now that's a little different. I mean, that's kind of cool. I like that, mutual struggling, mutual
Absolutely.
pain, there's.
And it was 6 a.m. in the morning. You and 100 of your closest friends got out there, and we raised a bunch of money for charity too. I mean, that's cool. Another way that I think that we got people to engage a little bit more was both the golf event and the 5K raised several $1,000s for Special Olympics of Arizona, which was, a great cause, and they participated in the event too. And so, it was a feel-good thing too. It wasn't just like you were getting out there for pure business. You're also helping. So yeah, I mean, I'm not a runner, so the idea of getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning and doing that isn't how I start my day. But good for those
good for
100
good
friends,
for them. Yeah. Tell me, you had a great keynote this year, and I mean, please share this one.
I mean, I've worked, in the association industry. You come across keynotes every year, right? Yep. And I got to say, hands down, Bill Walton is the best keynote I've ever hired. Bill Walton, basketball legend and announcer. Not only was he a good speaker during that 60 minutes where he talked about adversity. I mean, he's had 35 crippling surgeries, so many trades. He overcame a debilitating speech impediment to be a very well-known sportscaster.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's got these incredible stories about his life and how things, by having optimism and seeing the good in people and in situations, you can triumph. I mean, that message just resonated so well. But on top of that, again, I work in the background of these events, and so I have to interact. He's the easiest person to work with in the world. Not only was he easy by contract and things like that, but he asked my permission if he could come to our reception the night before and hang out with our audience, and that never ever happens. And he did. He showed up at the beginning, and he stayed until the very end and talked with every single person that wanted to talk to him. He took pictures with everybody. He not just come up and, hey, what's your name? Let me sign something. Is let me hear your story. He was talking to people for 10, 15 minutes at a time. I mean, just a great overall guy. And for those out there who plan meetings or invite people to speak at their companies, I'd recommend him 1,000 times. He's going to be tough to top. He's going to be tough to top for next year, but we're already working on it, and hopefully we can get near that again, because there was something magical that kept going throughout the entire event. People were still talking about, and they're still talking about Bill Walton. So
absolutely.
Love it.
I'm hearing
great.
it seriously. And this is why I had asked you about it. I had another guest on, a couple episodes ago. And his cover art for the episode, he wanted to have his picture with the Bill Walton picture, and he was talking about how great he was, and just talking about open book too. I mean, absolutely an open book, and it's no, that's fantastic. And as you know, I'm an old Portland guy, and so I was there, during the championship run and all that, and it shows my age right now, So I'm showing the 1977, age there. But yeah, that's really great. And I think you're right that, the right keynote can sometimes, be a catalyst for the rest of that event. So no, I'm glad that worked out for you.
Yeah, it was great.
So tell me a little bit about, you had a lot of time to, listen to some of the, distributors' concerns, what was going on in their life. Tell me what was the kind of the big overarching theme, I'd love to talk about the positive, but what was the biggest concern, man?
So honestly, I think that there was, I wouldn't even call it a concern. It was more of a confusion of a misalignment with what is, if we're specifically talking about the economic environment and, what's going on out there, there's a misalignment with what the news is saying and what they're feeling and seeing in their business. I think that, everyone is screaming from the rooftop, recession, and, start battening down the hatches and boarding up your doors because it's going to get crazy. And they're seeing the opposite in their business. They're seeing demand still strong. They're seeing supply chain ease. They're seeing positive labor numbers, which have been the big three that everyone's like, all right, if these are good, what are our really concerns? Some of the price stuff has gotten a little bit more under control. Inflation seems to be getting a little bit more under control. And so all these factors were making people say, all right, look, it's not a year ago today when things were going like crazy and all of the
Right.
floodgates open and all that pent up, backed up demand, is just going to start happening. But I think that, there was a sense of a return to somewhat normal conditions that, we're not just seeing back orders that are coming through. These are new orders. They are people reinvesting in their businesses. They are people that are looking to evolve the way that they do things, and they need more to spend more in order to do it. And so I think that there's still the same type of things, like inventory levels are still an issue, but I'm hearing positivity. I'm hearing like a little bit more like, all right, when is the bad thing going to happen that everyone says?
Yeah.
Again, a little bit of a slower pace than the previous year, but I think that's across the board everywhere. And it's not really a fair comparable. I think that it's really about, how close are people to achieving what they think they're going to do for the month. And we work with some outside firms to track some of that through survey. And we do a segment with Cleveland Research. They do a monthly distributor survey, and they looked specifically at industrial distributors. And last month, they did say that sales had slowed, but they hadn't gone into alarming levels. It's more just like they underperformed a little bit based on very hopeful, optimistic projections. So I don't think that it's saying that we're in a recession in the industrial channel. I just think it's saying we're getting back down to normal. And that's a good thing, I think, for everybody. It's easier to plan. It's easier to collaborate with peers. It's easier to collaborate with channel partners when there isn't just, okay, what's this huge fire to put out this week? Or what's this variable that is so out of control that we can't put good models together? We're getting back to the nuts and bolts of distribution and channel performance. And I think that that's important because it's been upheaval for 3 years.
Right. No, I'm really glad you talked about misalignment because I'm seeing the same thing, and I span, several different vertical markets. I have clients all across the board and they're all doing pretty darn well, and to your point, they are not doing the 18%, double digit growth, 18 to 20% growth, but a lot of it was inflation based. I mean, come on, let's be realistic here. But I'm telling you right now, I mean, the clients I work with, they're all growing. Maybe not as fast as they were, but they are growing. And I think that, these fears, they pay way too much attention to media-based fear that they're questioning their own abilities. And it knocks them off of their course. And I think they have to be very careful about the influences that they're taking in. Look what's in front of you. We have a good, we're still going good. Your customers are still asking for stuff. And as you said, the supply is easing. We're able to get stuff. Don't have as many crazy back orders and things like that. And, because we maybe bought like drunken sailors, we have a little extra laying around. So, we can sell it. And I don't know. It is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And it is an opportunity to look at your business now that things have settled and to make some sound decisions without feeling like it's just putting fires out. Everybody was looking for that big differentiating cut, like over these last couple of years, like I need to make some massive move to position myself, be it major acquisition or investment in technology or a change in your vertical, maybe bringing on different products and different areas of expertise internally. But I think that for now, what we're seeing is the fundamentals, a fundamentally sound distributorship or a fundamentally sound channel partnership is outperforming. I mean, they're outperforming competitors because of that alignment. And that's, I mean, not to be self-serving here, but you did invite me on here. I am being self-serve a little bit. That's what ISA is really about, is it's about connecting as equal partners, manufacturers and distributors and reps, so that they can optimize this supply chain. I mean, the conditions are good. The conditions are good for a strong partnership. And all ISA wants to do is help facilitate that and encourage it so that our end user continues to want to buy from channel because they have options. I just strongly believe that their best option in almost all scenarios is to buy through channel. And the way that we can make sure that that continues to happen is by giving a forum for open-minded distributors, manufacturers, and reps to work closer together and provide value. And those are the fundamentals of working closer together. So I think it's a great opportunity right now for at least the industrial channel and other channels as well to outperform based on better relationships and better ideas and innovations. I think that there's a really good opportunity in the market right now.
Absolutely. I mean, the blocking and tackling. I mean, if we can get those down right, then a lot of other things kind of seem to fall into place. And then I think that you have bandwidth at that point and mental bandwidth to take on some of the more radical ideas, if you will, the more innovation. You have space to innovate. When you get the blocking and tackling down, you're not so disjointed in that side that once you're down there, then I now have a little visionary space. I can get in, get creative again, get curious about things again. That's when the fun stuff starts to happen. But I'm glad you mentioned that there was a little distraction over the last couple of years. And maybe it's still around in that, there was so much emphasis on, having to go to e-commerce or having to go digital in some form or fashion. And not that I disagree, but not at the expense of the blocking and tackling.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I also agree that, you can't ignore the rise of digital, and you can't ignore a modern customer and their behaviors and their desires and how you're compared to other buying experiences. You can't ignore that. I just think that right now it feels like there's 10 new tech companies on the market every week, and they're all offering to solve all problems and to cut FTEs and to make your customer buying experience better. And look, I work with a lot of these companies, and most of them are fantastic, and they are providing
Agreed.
real value. I think it is just because there was so much happening, there was so many people talking about it too, and that what kind of got lost in the mix there, and it is an emphasis on the fundamentals of things. And it came at a tough time because we're also in a big labor shift right now.
Yes,
we're in a big demographic labor shift. People are retiring and walking out the door with a lot of those fundamentals baked into who they are. And so when you have that happening and you have a newer workforce coming in that all they're hearing about is how awesome digital is and how awesome the SaaS software is going to be. Again, I don't want to take anything away from those companies. We all need them. We all need AI. We all need this to make our customers' buying experience better. But underneath all that, we need to be locked and loaded on the fundamentals of how to have a solid channel, how to do things like channel conflict and strategic pricing, and how to optimize rebate programs, or understanding a financial model for a distributor. I mean, those are, they sound crazy, but these are the things that I feel like if you're younger in your career and you're stepping into a leadership role, you need to make sure those are rock solid in your understanding and in your team's understanding, so that you can go after a digitally enhanced offering and do that. Otherwise, what's going to happen is someone's going to come to your website, they're going to buy you, and you're not really going to understand why it doesn't work every single time. And so I think that a return back to focusing on the fundamentals is key right now. And we're trying to do that at ISA right now. We've got a good program happening this summer for our summer sessions, and this is free for all ISA members. We are demystifying what omnichannel means, because it's not just about...
That is a goofy expression right there. So yeah.
It is. And I think that it scares a lot of people. And so we want to look at what omnichannel might mean from a sales perspective, what it might mean from a marketing perspective, and then also how do those same principles apply to talent? I mean, it's more of a thought than it is a tactic. It is how do you look at this I want everything now mentality, and how can you deliver on that without needing to be a multi-billion-dollar company? So that's one of the things we're working on. And then we're about to launch, and this is kind of a sneak peek, registration for our fall summit, which is an in-person event in Orlando in October that has 3 tracks. And we added a 3rd track this year, and it's all about channel. We're calling it our Channel Pros track, and it's going to touch on all those fundamental topics I just mentioned. It's going to have a session on channel conflict, have a session on strategic pricing, have a session on rebate programs, all of these things that people just need to understand and know. So look out for that one early July. It should be a great program, good value for the investment, but it aligns with exactly what we're talking about now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think, one thing, I wanted to step back and touch on was that messaging of we have to go digital. And I heard it just really quickly, the thought of, being able to reduce FTE or full-time employees. Boy, that's got to be scary messaging for those people in our businesses.
It really is. And I think it's the unspoken allure. I think that, they aren't necessarily coming out and advertising on their websites, you're going to be able to lay off 10 employees this week. And isn't that awesome? I think that everybody knows that it's a massive line in their P&L. The headcount is a massive line, and they're looking for ways to take money out of the middle while driving sales. But they're looking for ways to be more efficient. Everybody is. But I don't know that that's necessarily what will happen as a result of this. I think there will be some skill shifting where, businesses will need some different skills than they did in the past. But I think a lot of these tools are intended to enhance people as opposed to replace. I think that you want more productivity out of each FTE, and these tools are designed to do that. AI is designed to do that so that they aren't just doing repetitive task after repetitive task. I mean, not everybody can invest in a full warehouse automation system that, doesn't have people. Very few companies can. And so I don't think that we're at a tipping point right now where, we're in Terminator land or anything like that. I think that it is, people are still at the core of what makes this country and this industry run. It just means that we have to keep our eyes open, but remember who we are as a business.
Right. Exactly. Remember who we are, and remember that, we rely, and these companies are made up of amazing people, not amazing machines. They're amazing people. And just remember that all the time. But also, as the leader of that organization, remind the company, this is who we are.
Absolutely.
We get these neat things, and you're right, they enhance. And I absolutely agree. Look, I'm fascinated by what's going on right now from a technology standpoint, but I work with people. This is a fascination. This is interesting. And how do I enhance the experience of the person? And again, productivity, all kinds of things like that. But yeah, it's neat stuff. Well, but this is the business. This is who we are.
It is. And don't you want to optimize the things that you're really good at? So if you're someone who says that they like to work with people, don't you want to not do the things that, you don't like doing, like order automation or invoicing or whatever that might be? Yeah. I mean, if you don't like doing that stuff and your time is much better spent interacting with customers or people, then this just allows you to do more of what you like to do and less of what you don't like to do. So I think it's a good tool when you look at it through those lenses, if we're talking about, ChatGPT and some of the AI stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I love that stuff. But I think that also, if we can get the blocking and tackling down, we get the fundamentals down, we have bandwidth now, mental bandwidth to be curious again. And that's kind of where some of these different, where does something like ChatGPT fit in our businesses in a very employee-driven, transactional business? Where does that fit? And so I think, again, you can't have that conversation if people are afraid of it, and two, you don't have the bandwidth mentally for it.
Correct. I mean, you can't, I don't think you can ignore it, especially if you're trying to engage a younger employee base. They will immediately come and be like, so why are you doing this when ChatGPT can just do it? And so, yes, we can all be purists and be like, well, what about the art of writing, or what about the art of thought and things like that? Be like, all right, but look at how much more, like, these younger kids are going to say, I want to be efficient. I don't want to waste time on anything. That's right. I say younger kids, I'm talking about people in their 30s. But, I think that you can't ignore it, and you have to be literate in it enough, or at least let it happen to your business. Otherwise, I think young people will look at you and say, you're just missing out on the opportunity to be slicker and to move a little faster. Mm-hmm. So I think that one of the biggest things that's going to impact our industry overall is how we engage with our emerging leaders, how we engage with this younger cohort of really high potential, smart folks that by just sheer numbers are going to take over.
Totally.
And so how do we make it so that we can arm these people with as much as we possibly do? And we're trying to do that at ISA. We've got some new programs and certifications for emerging leaders that are intended to both teach the fundamentals, but also just bring them up a little bit faster in the industry. How do we get them exposed sooner so they don't have to, quote unquote, pay their dues for 10, 15 years before they can come to a trade show or before they can get in front of a customer? I mean, they don't want to wait, and we'll lose them to tech. We'll lose them to other industries, healthcare, or something else that is going to give them what they want right now.
Isn't that absurd, though? I mean, that absurd notion that you have to pay your dues for 15 years before you come to a trade show. Are you kidding me? Those folks, if I could afford it, I mean, I would want them there so early in the game, because they can see things that I, as a Gen Xer, for example, or a baby boom, we can't see. We just can't see. And that's where I think bringing them into these sessions, these networking sessions, they can hear things and see things that we're just not capable of seeing.
Totally.
And so I'd love to. Yeah, I think that's a great message, really. And I do like the I don't know if it's a trend or the direction of associations, forming and really spending time with emerging leaders, because
it's a sustainability. I mean, it would be bad. Yeah. Like, you think about it in terms of your businesses. If the majority of your customers are going to retire in the next 5 years, what are you going to do as a business? Mm-hmm. Are you going to just retire with them, or do you need to engage that next audience? I think for associations, it's hard because you have to engage both. But I'm finding more and more, if we do a really good job of engaging with the emerging leaders, the older cohorts are following right with it. They're wanting to learn with the emerging leaders and from the emerging leaders. It's happening right now. I think we're at that inflection point right now where these two groups are coming together a lot more. I think that we thought before there was definitely two divides. There were the young kids and the old people. And now I do believe that they're getting on the same page, and associations are playing a role to make that happen.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. So, well, Brendan, this has been fantastic, man. I've really enjoyed, speaking with you and learning more about the direction that you're taking ISA. It's a great association. I've been around it a long time. I've seen it a long time. And I'm thrilled for the direction you're going on.
Well, thanks so much for saying that, Jason. And again, thank you for having me here today and getting me in front of your audience. I'm wide open to conversation. So please, anybody out there, if you have ideas for how we can make associations better or anything like that, I am one LinkedIn connection away or an email away. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
And we'll make sure we get those connections in the show notes so people can bombard your LinkedIn box or your mail. And you may regret saying that, but that wouldn't be a bad thing.
So, not a bad thing. No.
All right. Take care. Thanks again for doing this. And I look forward to crossing paths sometime.
All right. Thanks so much, Jason.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.